More the fun and exciting part of this.
You know, Jack asked me the other day if he could come to this. I said, sure. I don't know whether he'll show up or not.
It's a public meeting. Him and I have still not connected on the whole.
That's what he told me. He said, you guys are just playing phone tag.
It's been like a month steady now.
Well, he got engaged now, so he's, I guess, all in love. Jack Humpler
Happens
from West
to
Reading.
us.
Well,
Against our better judgment sometimes.
you know, you'd think you'd have better control over the weather.
I know. I'll tell you. At the beginning of the day, it looked great. It said 7 o'clock it was gonna rain. I'm like, great shape. And then somehow all of a sudden 4 o'clock, it started coming down. I'm like, oh boy. It did make cleanup a lot easier.
That is a positive spin.
Yes, it got people out a little sooner than we thought. And most of the vendors were okay. A couple were grumpy, but
It looked like a good crowd, though.
it was a great
When
one.
I,
Yeah, yeah. And when the weather was good, it was great. No, it worked out great then.
so Pete, now we gotta find a chef. But you knew that was.
Right down the chat.
Yeah. I would assume if we're down there, we can call over there. I'm sure. They can get us on.
That's all I'm saying. It was just that you didn't shoot the chat.
I was telling someone about your man closet yesterday. Oh, we had a zoning hearing and David Ryan, hey Jody, was asking
Hey,
me
Jody?
what all you were doing to the property. And I said, well, do you want the inside or do you want the outside? Cause I was like, I'm
Yeah, that
like
would've
his
been-
man closet. He's like, his man closet. I'm like, oh, it's gorgeous.
Slash office. Slash office.
Slash hiding spot.
Exactly.
And how's Jody?
Safer.
We all need one of those. How about you?
Just wonderful.
Hey, John.
Hi, John. Everybody. Morning, John. Sorry, I'm a little.
No, you're just fashionably.
You're right on time.
Yeah, actually you are.
You
You're
know,
early. You wanna
I
go
walked this morning and I saw many people I haven't talked to in a year. It took a long time.
Do you set the alarm on your new phone?
I keep forgetting to bring it.
I heard you have an issue that you forget to plug it in too,
Yeah,
so
I
the
heard that
battery's
too.
dead all the time. That's what Peggy told me.
Did you, before I forget, did you get my text with that phone number?
I did,
Okay.
and I'll ring him after the meeting. How about, I saw Phil Wirt pulling up, so we'll wait until he gets here.
That's how you.
The meeting's gonna go until 10. I mean that in a good way. I love hearing Phil talk.
Actually have that next to the bed. I just put play.
Phil talks. It puts you to sleep.
So wait till it's sort of John looks like a man on a permanent vacation.
Except Tuesdays.
Except for Tuesdays.
He's on grand jury duty in Philadelphia.
Oh, that's right.
boy.
Just
Every
when you thought you
Tuesday
were
for
retired.
18 months.
Oh, 18 months.
So you were selected.
He's got a letter in the mail, you know.
You have to show up or you're actually selected.
I had
Hi,
to show
Phil.
up, then I was selected.
Hey,
Hi, Phil.
Morning, Phil. Nice to meet you.
All right, the gang's all here. Does everybody know Phil Wirt and Mark
yes.
Radcliffe? I think we all know each other. And I'll call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Do you want to give a roll call?
John Hoover,
Here.
Dave Boucher,
Here.
Fred Levering,
Here.
Bill Jenks,
Here.
Keith Sher,
Here.
and Greg Portner will be absent today.
That's right, we got an email. Is there any public comment?
Just a few words I wanted to say about the agendas. I'm really happy that we finally are publishing the agenda, but I cannot not observe how, summary this thing is. We really don't know what this is about. I think we can do a little bit better than that if we compare to how the agendas look at the Berks Commissioners meeting. There's quite a bit of detail of what's going on there. Just a few ideas there is not enough for the public to have some idea of what we're talking about here. I think we can do better than that. We're spending 4 rows over there explaining how the public comment has to be in, extra detail how the public comment has to be, but the other stuff, there's nothing about it, only that Mark is here and that's it. So I think we can do better than that so that the public, morning, is more aware of what is gonna be discussed at the meeting. Thank you.
How much more aware than that do you have to be?
Excuse me?
How much more aware than that do you have to be?
I think it can be done better. I think just look at the commissioners' meeting and you get some idea. At those agendas, they go into 2-3 pages. That's an agenda. This is very summary.
Well, I think that's what an agenda is, but
Well, that's why I made the public comment. Obviously, you will. I'm sure you're happy with what we have, but from the public's point of view, we need a bit more than that.
would you like to make a public comment? Okay, let's move on to the Main Street, Elm Street portion of the agenda. We talked about this last month, Mark, and and you and I have talked about it, obviously, and I think there are advantages for both boroughs for us to join forces to try to get some things done. Now, Wyomissing's Main Street will never be like West Reading's Main Street, but there are other things that we could do in conjunction, infrastructure, signage, whatever. Would you like to say a couple words about
Sure.
that?
Michelle and I talked about this a little bit, maybe even a year ago. And the reason it came up for me was because when we are out promoting West Reading, sometimes we'll promote Sly Fox or Dunder and Heaster or something like that that's going on. And we've got some merchants that are upset that we're spending any time and effort promoting a Wyomissing business because they don't pay any money towards what we're doing, our efforts, which I think is short-sighted. I think anybody that's within a stone's throw of West Reading should be included in who we are. But that was kind of their view, and I understand it to some extent, but it brings me back to kind of the comment I make all the time is our metro area is comprised of approximately 8 townships and boroughs that all work independently, and I feel like they all have their own pots of money and they're always working within their own pots of money instead of being a larger community that's all working together and one pot of money, and that I think would go a lot further. And to that extent, how can we bring our communities together a little bit more, just to try to work together and keep this ball rolling. I think West Reading's on a good roll right now, and I think it would be great to start to tie in Wyomissing to what we're doing. Start to promote what's going on there, and the advantage to Wyomissing is we're also out looking for grants and things, and as we did with the multimodal grant, that being able to tie the 2 townships together, boroughs, is I think advantageous for us both from an application standpoint and just from a complete all around the board. I think it's beneficial for us. So
I agree with that, but what do you think would cost Borough of Wyomissing to engage in this process?
Right now, West Reading pays us, like $45,000.
It's around $45,000 per year come out. It comes out of the borough's general fund directly to this foundation, private foundation that Mark heads up. So that used to be, John can remember this, years ago when John was on the foundation board with us. It was a lot more than that. It was in the 6-figure range. That had been dialed back over the years, not for any particular reason other than sort of pushing the foundation a little bit to be a bit more financially independent of the borough. The foundation was only set up, well, it's about 20 years now, I guess. And interestingly enough, and a lot of times we would forget this in West Reading, is that one of the main reasons, the thrust behind the formation of the foundation was to have just like the education foundations that are out there. If we have a private donor that wants to give money toward a project, but would like some form of tax write-off, they can funnel to the foundation that comes around and hands it to the borough. We've done that a couple of times now, and the foundation has never said no. We actually encourage that. So there's some advantageous reasons why we have it that way. That's not to say that there has to be a separate foundation. I'm not saying that at all, but I think yeah, the original question was around $45,000 of unrestricted funds goes into the foundation coffers directly from the borough. There's never any strings attached. There have been attempts by previous councils to put strings on it, but I've had the opportunity to beat that back. You know, I always say to Mark, you don't go to a restaurant, have a bad meal, and say, well, sorry, I had a bad meal, I'm gonna walk out on the bill. If the foundation wouldn't do their job for a year or not follow their vision and mission statements or be accomplishing goals, then of course the borough can say the next year, sorry, last year you didn't do what you needed to do, so no money this year. I feel it's sort of like in the same way, how that works, but that's just it. The foundation's always done what it's intended to do year after year after year, and thankfully, like hopefully maybe some of you saw on Saturday when we had our Art in the Avenue Festival, our first big return back to that type of stuff came off other than rain. It went really, really well, but nonetheless, just to reiterate what Mark's trying to get across, I think he did a really good job. So, explaining what the vision is here, I think the medical school is a big game changer in this whole discussion, because unless I'm wrong, Michelle would know intimately, you're getting more interest in parcels over there, most likely because of that. That's literally, 60 seconds from our room. I can see the entire medical school from my bedroom window. Because I live on the north side of Penn Avenue. Literally, I look at my bedroom window and there's the medical school. So to say that they're not integrated on some level that's just silly. It's an invisible line, because we live, eat, and breathe this stuff all the time. We know that the border is 8th Avenue. Everybody else thinks it's Park Road. Everybody. So the border is relatively meaningless, other than the little tiny white and blue sign that says Borough of West Reading or Borough of Wyomissing, that kind of a thing. But from an organic standpoint, of how the parcels and the businesses interact, and how the pedestrians and customers interact with the environment, it's seamless. It doesn't really exist, quite honestly. And in my mind, I take it another at least 2 blocks up to here, at least, to Borough Hall, in my mind, as to how it can organically function as a whole. There's, I would say, at least a solid block or 2 of Penn Avenue in Wyomissing that reflects, to a large degree, in my mind, architecturally, what West Reading has. There's no reason why that can't continue to flow. Fred and John have been around for a long time. When we used to talk about the ICGR, the corridor, over and over and over again. But and I'm starting to hear rumblings again of that. I don't know how long it's going to take for the city of Reading to understand how to make these things work. And we can beat up on Reading all day long, unfortunately, about some of their economic development efforts. But I feel like there's a little bit more thrust behind them, mainly because of Albernia. A private organization had to come in to kind of like kick the booster rockets in and get something going. But that's a good thing, though. This whole concept of the corridor might actually, to some degree, come together more so than it ever has in the past. And again, that benefits the city, that benefits both of us on this side of the river. So I think this is a really good conversation to have. I don't know if anyone saw in the Eagle that I believe the city is going to try to put in for Main Street designation, another 5-year designation, and if anybody remembers, they did have a 5-year designation a number of years ago. They literally did nothing with it. They did not apply for 1 grant on the state level. They sat there on a 5-year designation and did nothing, so that is a little discouraging. They should be more of a partner with both of us on certain things when it comes to this type of thing, but that's sorely been lacking. But I think there's an opportunity here for at least West Reading and Wyomissing to work more closely together than we already do. We do work really closely in a lot of things. You're our #1 partners when it comes to a lot of different things. There's a lot of trust there, and I think we can leverage that trust, moving the ball forward from an economic development standpoint.
So we get, sorry, good job.
No.
So we get 45,000 from the borough. We also get some money from the Johnson Foundation and the Wyomissing Foundation to support staffing needs and those kind of things. So we're probably up around 65, maybe 70,000 total for our working budget.
Is that including 45 from West Reading?
Yes.
Do the individual businesses join the foundation or association of some sort? Do they pay a fee?
So we had a merchant fee.
Wow, you really just poked the sore point.
Well, it seems like they're the ones getting a lot of the benefits. It seems like they should be contributing.
So we're gonna have him come down to the avenue and.
So when I started, there was a merchant fee that people paid, but really
That was
less
a
than.
bid.
No bid. That was, so we did have a bid.
Merchants Association, I think that's what it was.
Oh,
Yeah. So we did have a bid, over 10 years ago that got voted out. It was very, very small. I think they only received like 25,000.
It was about 36,000, it only raised about 36,000, business improvement district.
Yeah. So it didn't raise enough money to really do anything, and the businesses didn't feel they were getting any value from it, so they voted it out. And then
One
we had.
cheerleader led the charge and
Right.
owned a lot of properties, and she killed it almost single-handedly.
Yeah. And then we had Merchants Association fee, but it wasn't mandatory, and only 20% of the people or less paid into it. This person that John's talking about started their own kind of, well, there was a period where the borough did not hire a Main Street manager, didn't have a Main Street manager. So at that point in time, this other person kind of started their own little Main Street group. And we were kind of competing, and when I came in, I decided just to do away with any merchant fees. The reason they were paying merchant fees was because they got a booth space for free at our events. So I just started charging for booth spaces at the events. We're actually making more from the merchants now than we were back when we were charging merchant fees. But, all that said, we are looking to reestablish a bid, hopefully before the end of the year, that we're looking to raise $150,000 to go towards the organization. We've got right now myself and a part-time events coordinator and a part-time bookkeeper, whereas, not Amber, but Boyertown. Yeah, Boyertown has a full-time events person, they've got a full-time marketing person, they've got a full-time Main Street manager, and that's for a township that does a fraction of what we do. It would be nice to add a little bit of that to it. And social media is such a big thing right now that having a full-time person, honestly, pays for itself. But getting the merchants to pay, and the only way to get them to pay universally is through a bid of some kind, and forcing them to do it.
And the person who killed the bid last time, she's on board to some extent, or?
She voted yes that we would implement a bid, but then she's told me privately that she's not for it. So, we'll see what happens there.
That's interesting.
It costs a lot of money to institute the process to establish a bid. It costs like, how much it cost, $15,000?
At least 10 to 15,000.
Yeah, it's just, it's counterintuitive. These people, want other people to do stuff for
Yeah.
them, and they won't do it for themselves,
Right.
as you said.
Right.
And, anyway.
I just wanted to quickly add, the multiple times Mark and I have talked about this, in my eyes, we could definitely bring the 2 blocks down on Penn to say here, but I've always envisioned if the retail at Wyomissing Square ever finally takes off, and what West Reading's trying to do on our Hill Avenue turns into Reading Avenue in West Reading, So that would be another natural extension of it, as well as Park Road. So I mean, it's just more food for thought. You don't necessarily have the same architectural aesthetic on Park Road, but because of the medical school and the, yes, multiple conversations I've been having about various properties over there and, you know, things potentially coming down the pike, that would be a no-brainer for another direction it could go in.
Right, so your initial question was how much, you know, does it cost? And, you know, how much would we look to get from Wyomissing? We're not really throwing out any real number right now. You know, our conversation was initially, like, let's maybe do a little test and see if, you know, just the initial businesses over the border and I think maybe up to, you know, Denver, Easter, and Do-Si-Do, exactly. You know, maybe that little corridor could be a little test for us to see how it goes. You know, maybe it gets worked out. Jokingly, I said, well, how much square footage are we promoting in West Reading versus how much are we promoting in Wyomissing? And that's how the dollars get broken. So,
Have we had a discussion with the Do-Si-Do people or the Sly Fox people, or, I mean, maybe we should get a feel for what their aspect would be as to the whole thing.
I think
I mean, if they're gonna spend taxpayer dollars, it should be, they're contributing towards that, so, and if there ever would be a fee of some sort, maybe we need to see if they're on board. I mean, even out as far as Willoughby's but I guess George is doing something in West Reading anyway, probably he's behind the effort, so I would think he would be also willing to promote Park Road.
We haven't had one of those business people get-togethers, maybe had a couple of breakfasts and stuff like that. Maybe it's fun.
I think you at least ought to ask them.
I think we'll talk about that a little later, but.
yeah, if
I
I was
would
a
think
business.
Todd, Dunbar Easter would be on board. I mean, he's, you know, I mean, talking about social media, and he's doing something all the time.
Yeah.
And Sly Fox is really helpful.
Yeah.
I would think they'd be interested just based off of their interest in wanting to participate in West Reading's events. Conversations I've had with Randy and
Did-
John, the owner.
Did I hear that building next to Sly Fox?
You heard nothing, I'll have an announcement shortly.
Thank you.
Shortly today.
No, shortly within a week.
Okay, so let's move on from this topic, but how do we proceed from here?
I have a suggestion. Well, perhaps we could start out with some sort of a memo of understanding between the two boroughs here, just to put something in writing that, yes, we recognize some synergisms that we should be working together on, and where it leads remains to be seen. And, you know, you had mentioned about the card thing, the city's trying again. I've been involved in some of that stuff for a long time. And I would have to observe that the fundamental difference is that the people behind doing things in the city have a tendency not to live there. There have been a series of saviors from around town that envision themselves one that's gonna finally find the key to revitalizing the city. I think that their biggest problem is they don't have people that live there, just live and breathe it as we do in West Reading and Wyomissing. But the synergisms are very obvious. I mean, you alluded to the medical school opening pretty soon. Merchants that gripe about spending money in West Reading don't seem to mind taking advantage of the fact that the medical school is gonna open up.
Right.
So I think you gotta look at it in that broader perspective, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the compartmentalization of local government in Pennsylvania is such that, you know, most other states, things like this are county-based, you know? But we do it a special way here, and I'm not criticizing that, it's our own special flavor, and like Mark said, it's just, you know, the fiefdoms and you know, how we have to do things, sometimes it might be confusing to the outside money that's not used to doing projects here. That was being, you know, Philly-based, they understood that they had a big parcel that straddled two municipalities, but were surprised to find out that the zoning completely reflected themselves. And, you know, Fred and I, you worked on years and years ago to make sure that whoever bought that could go to either side and say, oh, it's the same side, the same way on both sides, it's just two organizations, but the zoning is completely the same. This is gonna be easy to do. I don't have to line anything up or ask for special, relief or what have you. So that's one, a good example of how we've worked together in the past to try to accomplish some of these goals. I mean, Equus, they moved very quickly, and that's from their own mouths. They were able to move as quickly as they did on that project because they had municipal partners that were, had already done a lot of the groundwork to set that up, to do what they needed to do. And that's a really good thing. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here going forward because of, in my mind, the two anchors, the medical school and the Alvernia project. Drexel's come to us because there's a lack of housing. And I'm sure they've come to you guys. There's a lack of housing. We're the municipal government. We can't start building housing for a private university, but they were, I guess to some degree, they were surprised to find out that there wasn't a lot of availability for housing units for their staff, faculty, students, what have you. So there's pressure on the market to try to solve that problem. I hear rumblings that some of those solutions might be coming down the pipe. But again, the impetus is that gigantic facility that's going in there, and it'll be very soon. I forget her name now. We have a task force set up with Wyomissing and Johnson Foundations. Yeah, we just invited someone from Drexel to join our group, and she joined us for the first time earlier this month and was
Vice Dean? Yeah, I think they were listening.
Vice Dean of, she's going to be basically the Drexel person on the ground here for the medical school. So it wasn't just sort of like an assistant or somebody. She has a little bit of pull, but she's very excited. It seems from what she was telling us, Drexel's very excited to be here. And I know, the next 5 to 10 years, for everything will get trained.
No doubt about it.
Because it's been smooth so far up until this point, right?
Aaron was Steve.
I have a couple of questions on the subject of going forward. With regard to the activities and programming and direction of the Main Street and Elm Street programs, is it the foundation and Mark that are, calling the shots on that? So the Borough Council in West Benny is providing funding, but they're not in charge of the decision-making about the activities and programming. Am I correct about that?
No, to some extent they are. I go to every borough council meeting, I do a report to council, and when it comes to street closures and approval to do things, even sidewalk sales, I need to get approval from council.
Okay, but initiating, what those activities are gonna be, is that coming out of?
That's coming out of our office, yeah. We're coming up with the ideas, and then we're looking for approval from council to do
But
those.
council's approval is more on those regulatory and permitting type issues, so, okay,
That's right.
all right.
Yeah, it gets a little confusing.
Unless they want to get involved and help plan things.
Yeah,
but usually they don't.
the borough has a separate economic development committee that I chair, and I'm on the commission. There's a lot of overlap there. You could even probably argue redundancy, but we've sort of carved out a little niche for our economic development committee on the borough side, because Mark comes to all those meetings as well. He's on that committee as well, and so is John. He always gives us the Wyomissing report for our EDC, but we're sort of we like to monitor the exact the business openings and closings on the avenue. Who's coming in, who's not coming in, and I'll just reiterate that. I know Mark, we've heard these details 1,000 times. So when the pandemic was just locking us all down, of course, our hearts were stricken with fear and where, oh goodness, we're going to lose all of these fabulous, private businesses, mom and pop businesses.
And the
because
momentum.
the momentum, we're going to lose the momentum. This is the worst case scenario. Penn Avenue's going to die, and the exact opposite happened. I don't remember the numbers anymore, but the amount of businesses that closed,
We had 8 businesses closed and we had 24 open during the pandemic. And I think part of that was because people were getting paid to not work, or they were sitting at home and had more than enough time to think, what else would I like to do? And I think people opened up passion projects in West Reading. Some people moved actually from other townships into West Reading, but for the most part, I think it was passion
I
projects.
think the big takeaway from that is, and that's great news, but the underlying resiliency of the systems that have been put in place, whether it's through zoning or good planning or attracting really good savvy business owners that know how to navigate adversity. That is my takeaway, is that the resiliency of the business community was able to persevere the worst economic storm in a century and come out swinging on the back end of it. So that tells us that it's not a paper tiger, that it has some underlying strengths, that it can take a punch, it can bounce back and learn from that and become even stronger and know how to, move on the fly, if you will, change business practices, change your business model, try to leverage new regulations, whether it's, the bar can only sell takeout slushies now, or whatever we all dealt with a year ago. That was my takeaway, to know that what we've done is not some type of just facade. It's literally has inherent strengths from a business community standpoint. I always say that sometimes when the business owners get a little uppity about certain things, I like to kind of say this. Listen, there's very few businesses on Penn Avenue that can solely and singularly stand on their own out in a field somewhere and have the ability to draw in customers. They feed off of one another. It's the close geographical proximity to one another that allows them to complement one another. We have all of these bars and restaurants, and they're gangbusters because if I can't get in here, I can walk, 4 storefronts down and get in there. If I can't get coffee here, I can walk 3 or 4 storefronts down and get coffee there. And that is really, that's how community's supposed to work. I mean, think of when you go to, we've all been on vacation, perhaps maybe overseas to a European country where things are a little bit more dense, and you walk down, or Broadway in Nashville or what have you, where it's like everything's on top of one another and everything is doing great. Well, how is that? The competition's fierce, but they're all succeeding because collectively if someone can come in, take an Uber, park their car or whatever, get out. If I can't go here, I've got all these other options. And sometimes businesses need to be reminded of that together, the geographical togetherness is what is defining your success to some degree. Yes, you want to navigate, your business practices or whatever, and that's why I feel that inherent architectural structures of a certain couple of blocks here in Wyo and leveraging some things that are going on Park Road, again, it just feeds off of one another.
Well, I always said that I'd rather have my biggest competitor right next door than 10 miles away in the first place. And to your point, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong, theoretically, the foundation's supposed to be arm's length away from council, but practically, it's not.
I represent the borough of Boyertown, so I see some of the dynamic there between the Main Street program and the borough council. And, I imagine it's not terribly dissimilar at West Reading. But a follow-up to that, if Wyomissing is to engage with the Main Street, Elm Street program in West Reading, I want to understand who is the foundation. I mean, what board, who is on the board, how are they selected? Are they internally selected by existing board members? And, because I want to understand how the borough could connect with that. Other than, I mean, if it's truly independent and, if council is not selecting anybody on the foundation board, then it's really a matter of just developing relationships. But if the council is involved in the selection of the foundation board, then, I want to know more about that. So what can you tell me about that?
Sure. So we do choose our own board. Borough Council council has nothing to do with that. We do include a couple borough representatives on our board, but right now we have 4 Wyomissing residents on our board. You know, it's independent, it's a mix of business owners.
There's only, we rewrote the bylaws actually I rewrote the bylaws about 4 years ago to take all those requirements out. I think the only standing person on the board anymore is actually the borough manager. The borough manager of West Reading sits as a voting member, sits on the foundation board.
You're the mayor.
I don't know if it's a requirement anymore. I think the mayor is asked to sit on if they would like to, but it's not a requirement. It used to be a lot more stringent where there was more council involvement in choosing seats.
Right.
And a lot of us wanted, especially me, wanted to get away from that to have more of a separation. So now we expanded the board seats. So there's actually a couple of empty seats right now. We've given ourselves the ability to have up to, I believe, 15 members, and I think right now we're at 9, something around there. So there's a couple of seats that we have not fleshed out yet. Not that we didn't want to, we just haven't gotten around to, coordinate certain asks. It's one of those things where, it'd be great to bring certain types of skill sets to the board, and we just haven't gotten around to do that yet.
Would you be willing to share some of those organizational documents, the bylaws,
Absolutely.
and maybe the articles of incorporation, so we can see?
We've got a governance manual, updated bylaws, and the articles of incorporation, I think, they're around somewhere.
Some shelf, some shelf.
Yeah.
We've been around for 20 years, so we'll dust them off. Okay.
You know, the one thing going back to what the two of you said is the degree of trust between the two municipalities has only gotten better and better and better. I applaud everybody involved by both municipalities to make this happen. I had a rather lengthy conversation with Jack Humbach last week, and he told me that through this state representation thing that they want to remove Jim Cox from representing West Reading and have him send representatives to the city. Have you heard anything to this effect?
It used to be that way, didn't it?
When they redistrict, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, no.
Yeah, Jack told me this the other day, and that concerned me because, we have the working relationship that we do, and we should have the same state representative working for both of us together.
No, we have Mark Rossi. Mark Rossi's ours, right?
Mark West.
Oh,
Yeah.
who's ours?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, Skill.
Yeah,
But, if they're.
to your point, we still have 2 different ones.
Right, we should have the same person. And I don't know how we can push
No,
the.
That's out of our hands.
That's way out of our hands. I mean,
There
that's
are
just the
pros and
population.
cons to that too, though. I mean, I think
There are-
having multiple advocates for the design community, it's beneficial. I think, I don't know having the same one would necessarily be an advantage.
I completely agree.
All right, we move.
Talk about the thing that you and I talked about the other day. I just wanted to float the idea real quick. I think this is an economic development topic. It's a little bit more mundane in nature, but I still think it's a thing. I'm a high school teacher normally, that's why I can be here with you guys in the summertime. And I traveled the bypass all the time. And maybe you notice, maybe you don't notice. I'm the passenger. My wife drives because we drive together. The graffiti that's on the corridor that pops up here and there. You may know or you may not know, about 10 years ago, the county had agreed to graffiti abatement program in place because we got some grant money from the state.
We've used it a lot.
Yeah, and that money's dried up. And so, in the last number of years, if in fact graffiti would pop up on the corridor, you could reach out to the county and they would usually get a couple of guys from BCP to come out to take it off. There's at least 4 to 5 places right now in the corridor some in Wyomissing, some in West Reading, that have been up now for at least 6 to 7 months. And I know and Michelle gets annoyed with me because
I don't.
I always email her about it when it's on the Wyomissing side.
Don't
But-
forget
Text
me.
my personal phone is what he
I text
does.
her personal, sorry.
That's okay.
But, so I reached out to the commissioner's office, so specifically to Kevin Barnhart's office, and said, hey, you know, can we get some county help here to try to abate some of this stuff? And it was kind of like, well, the money ran out years ago, and well, sometimes the prison sends guys out to take it off. So there's no formal structure in order to get some of this stuff off. And I see it as an economic development issue. Namely, we're trying to get sometimes outside developers coming into our community to try to invest. I don't see that being a good thing if a good portion of that traffic that they're going to be coming into our communities and seeing graffiti and saying, geez, do they really care that much? Now, of course, you get out in the city of Philadelphia, you see it everywhere, but that's a major city of 1.5 million people. We've been able to keep the quarter train abutments, bridge abutments very clean of graffiti, but it pops up. There's no way of how to abate this right now. There's no formal program, whether it's us, you guys, the city, the county, there's nothing. A lot of this is either PennDOT property or Norfolk Southern property. And my guess is, my gut tells me, if you reach out to them to ask them to abate graffiti on their own property, they'll either laugh in your face or they'll say, yeah, we'll get to it within the next 10 years, kind of a thing. But that's not how graffiti works. If you do a little research, graffiti that is abated within 48 hours of its appearance has less than a 10% chance of returning. Graffiti that's not abated within a year has an 80% chance of return. So I feel like there's a way how we could perhaps work together, whether it's West Reading, Wyomissing, perhaps maybe Spring Township, perhaps maybe the city, although I'm rather trepidatious in mentioning that, to try to either maybe each put a little bit of money in a pot and maybe put out an RFP or what have you to be able to access that every once in a while to have someone come in and take it off. Our public works sometimes goes out and takes it off, but when you're dealing specifically with the bypass, it's a safety issue. I don't feel that our public works departments have the ability to safely navigate that to a large degree. And I don't know if we want to put our guys in that type of a risk. And that's where I get a little worried. If it's residential graffiti, our public works department's going to likely take care of that. That's not a big deal. But it's the bypass, the irregular bypass that bothers me the most. It's high profile and the abatement is dangerous.
Unfortunately, the street lights don't work down there either, so you can't see it at night. The county's already had something in place. One of the, Chris would know much more about this than I, but there's gotta be legal issues with, removing something from a PennDOT
Well,
structure
we
or
can't
something.
touch it
So
without
we
their
can't.
permission.
So
Yeah.
if the county's already got something that at least was in place, I think that the starting place ought to be to, let's all
See
go
what
up
they got,
to the
yeah.
commissioners and see if we can't reinvigorate it somehow. Maybe we gotta participate, but they've already got something set up for those
The
legal
legal,
issues.
yeah, because I know we have a document from Norfolk Southern that they gave us a couple of years ago. When they rebuilt the Buttonwood Street Bridge, they rebuilt some of the abutments on the West Reading side. And they gave us a document, basically a carte blanche document that says if the graffiti appears on our abutments, you can take it off. Now, I took that as all of their property in West Reading. That's the way I choose to interpret it that way. Because they did chase the crew of our public works guys off their property a number of years ago that were painting graffiti. And that really kind of like rubbed me wrong. But then they gave us this letter when they rebuilt the abutments for Buttonwood Street Bridge. And so we have that. So at least from that community partner, we have a document. But you're right. Because I know whether it's the county or whether some of our guys have gone out and taken it off just because I tend to be a pain in the butt about this type of stuff because I want it down. And at this point, nobody's been able to give me a good answer. I've reached out to the warden at the prison about how to get this crew back up and running because apparently it got shut down because of the pandemic. No one got back to me.
Somebody at the county level retired.
There's a retirement involved too, because I asked that question.
I have to leave in a couple minutes, so does anybody have any other questions for me? Because Phil can probably answer most of my questions.
To Fred's point though, and maybe from the foundation as well, we keep talking about this graffiti issue and it's come up at several borough council meetings and committee meetings and so on. Maybe we should be taking an official position on it. Maybe the foundation should be writing a letter to the county with all of the reasons you mentioned. Maybe West Reading should, and maybe Wyomissing should. And maybe as a group, if we make it a public complaint or a
Yeah.
public inquiry with enough pressure from the surrounding areas.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to the jurisdictional question. The border is seamless. That bypasses the border between the jurisdictions, the municipal jurisdictions. It's seamless, and it's hard to coordinate. You know, oh, I think this graffiti is on the Wyomissing side of the border. I think it might be on the West Reading side of the border. It's really hard to figure out who you're supposed to be calling. So
All the
you're
more
right.
reasons it's a county issue.
All the more reason it should be a county issue. But you know, you're right, and good point, Fred. About they should already have something in their filing cabinet from the state allowing any abatement program to go out there and take care of it.
So I think we'll suggest to council that we send a letter at the next council
We
meeting.
should make a recommendation here.
Yeah. And I think West Reading and the foundation should do
Yeah,
the same. And if there are any other organizations that you can think of within those communities that could put pressure on the county, you know, if
Yeah.
enough people complain about it from a broader area.
Yeah,
maybe
I think
they'll
Spring
act on
Township
it.
would be a good person to talk to.
Well, Phil, you said you reached out to Barnhart about this?
I reached out to Kevin about 3-4 weeks ago,
Okay, and you haven't heard back?
and he forwarded my email to someone at the prison asking about, hey, you know, is your crew out? I forget the gentleman's name, I'd have to look it up. And he wrote back and said, yeah, we used to send guys out, we shut it down because of the pandemic, I'm looking to get it resurrected. And so I got copied on that response back. I emailed that person specifically with a couple of additional questions. I can't remember the gentleman's name, and no one got back to me. And maybe it bounced into a spam folder or what have you, I don't know. But I feel like there's no good recourse, there's no structure in place to, when this happens, this is what we do. Like, there's no formalized answer or structure right now in place. It's like, well, we used to have money, or well, but it's not going away, it's going to reoccur. So if you have an issue that you know is going to reoccur regardless of, you know what I mean, you should have a plan in place to address that. If you know, to a very large degree, it's likely going to come to you. Well, you know it is.
So, Keith, do you wanna make that motion?
I make a motion that we recommend the council to send a letter to officially request the county take action and resume action on graffiti issues.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And then follow up on the relationship with the foundation. I mean, I'd like to see those documents, but do you want to have a motion about continuing discussions with West Reading and foundation on this topic?
I think we should, but I also think we should get a pulse, take a pulse of the major businesses that would benefit from it, because it would be up to, if they're behind the initiative, we should pursue it. If they're bad, we don't really think it fits in,
Well, then
I don't
we
think we
need
should.
to initiate some kind of a, one of those breakfast meetings again or something.
Okay, if I was a business, I guess my question would be, are you gonna charge me more to be part of that? And if you're not, great, count me in.
Right.
So how do we go about that?
Well, we could have a breakfast, we could do a survey, and what are your feelings about funding? Is this something you want to pay for out of the general fund, or do you want to try to
It's the
initiate
easiest way to do it.
a business contribution?
I think it should be a joint effort, and I think if they're the beneficiary, just like, obviously they've resisted in West Reading, but I think if they're gonna get the benefit, they should have some skin in the game in terms of at least some contribution.
I
The
guess-
heart can be willing here, but geographically, one of the things that makes West Reading's attractive Main Street project and activity on Main Street is that it's all walkable within about a 4-block area. The further out you go, the more walking there is, the less attraction is gonna be. The Maniocs and so forth don't walk all the way to Conshohocken or back and forth, so, that's a geographical problem, even though the hearts of both municipalities may be in more cooperation. I think you're gonna have a more difficult time convincing businesses to participate financially because they're not gonna see the benefit of walking traffic in West Reading benefiting something on Park Road. That's a long walk.
Well,
Not-
The corridor plan had divided the entire run, running out into segments. And there was some math to it, people won't walk more than 1,500 feet or something.
Well, there was
There was a
trolley
little bit of
service
that.
and all that kind of stuff.
All right, so,
Something I just wanted to quickly add to that, one, Mark and I are more than willing to go proverbial door to door to introduce ourselves. I mean, we know most of those business owners, but, you know, to talk specifically about this. The other point is just, I mean, you can talk quickly about the marketing, I don't know, talk about street
Yeah,
sweep, but.
as far as walkable, I wish there were more people walking in West Reading. I mean, when it's a Friday night, you know, when it's prime time, you see plenty of people walking around. But if you were to drive down right now, there aren't that many people walking around. It's really the marketing benefit that the merchants get out of it. It's not so much the foot traffic. So, you know, it is what it is.
One of the first joint programs we talked about doing pre-pandemic was streetscape improvements. We were gonna apply for a joint multimodal to do streetscape from Buttonwood Reading all the way down Penn Avenue until you hit the intersection of State Hill Road, and then COVID hit, and because of match funds and requirements and budgets being very uncertain, we decided to shelve the project. So my guess is moving forward, that would be one of the first things we would potentially look at doing again. Phil?
Okay, I got one, I
Does the
apologize.
committee
Thanks,
want
Mark.
to
Mark.
See you guys, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark,
you.
I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Yeah, that's far more effective than a survey.
Why don't we?
so you're gonna talk to some businesses or the ones you think would benefit, but obviously it's not gonna be beneficial to a business office.
No, and I mean, Mark and I have had that conversation multiple times too. The reason I think the two municipalities work so well together is because our businesses are the clients, customers of what West Reading's doing and vice versa. You know, we're not, there's that competition factor, but it's not 12 solid blocks of restaurants and retails. It's a mix of, you know, professional service establishments and then retail commercial restaurant, and it plays very nicely together. But yes, we will pick a date and go do a walking tour to.
Has the Berks County tourism thing started back up again, or?
Yeah, I actually, Crystal Sites and I were talking 2 or 3 weeks ago for, the sale of the Crown Plaza. The buyer, the new owner behind that, wanted to do a joint press release statement. And they actually decided to wait a little bit until things were a little bit more back to normal with vaccination rates and the masking requirements going away. I'll put it back up, I'm sorry, not sorry. But no, they are starting to revamp their efforts.
Okay, I don't think we need a motion for that.
Well, how much time do you think they're gonna commit to that? I mean, I think the motion would be good to justify the expenditure of effort by Michelle on that project. So that would be my suggestion, make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
We have a second. Thank you. Get a motion to second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay. Let's move on here.
You may recall it.
See you, Phil. Thanks very much for
Thanks, Phil.
inviting
Thanks,
Mark.
Phil. I
We
appreciate you
the
coming.
discussion, thanks.
Bye, Phil.
Bye-bye.
You may recall at the past several meetings, we talked about the Nicholas Stoltzfus property and putting some type of historic tourism overlay with zoning regulations specific to what that property would like to do into place. Melissa sent out yesterday the draft ordinance, which is up on the screen. Chris and I, you know, tried to take, as I just accidentally X'd out with that, we tried to take the intent of what we thought the committee wanted to see. So some key points in here, I think, are, one, the principal building on the structure had to have been built 1799 or prior, you know, talking about what is historic. That was one of the questions we asked at the last meeting. Permitted uses, I really need to get a mouse for this laptop.
Another of the key requirements was that it be adjacent to an existing Berks County or Wyomissing public park. And both of those conditions, the one about the proximity to a park and the age, was to make sure that we didn't open this window too wide, that we wanted to, at least initially, keep it very narrow, so that we wouldn't get out of control.
So permitted uses, I mean, the numbers 1 through 8 that are up on the screen, pretty self-explanatory. Chris did include one short-term residential rental unit for history-based regional tourism guests. You may recall that Elam said about, an Airbnb, and those of you that toured the property are aware of that apartment area outside of where Elam and Esther reside. The one tweak I requested Chris make to this, which is added on this part, is under 503E4, the off-street parking requirement. I requested that shared parking agreement be written and recorded only because my concern, because I've seen it happen before, I approve something and there's a shared parking agreement, just a typical lease that's not recorded, and there's a falling out, or there's a change in tenancy and somebody forgets about that and the parking goes away and then we have a problem. So that was my only edited request.
Does it not require a specific number of parking spots just off-street? I mean, could that be one space?
To meet the requirements of section 609.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we're cross-referencing the existing off-street parking regulations, so whatever the uses are that are permitted, there are corresponding off-street parking requirements for each of those uses in the
So
ordinance.
like barn weddings, that could be 50, it could be 200.
Yeah, I don't know, I didn't look at specifically, how many spaces would be required for these uses.
It's gonna be based off the square footage of the space they're using for the wedding, so the square footage of that barn, it's one space per so many square feet.
Does that prohibit them from even moving forward?
What prohibits them right now from moving forward is they really have no parking on their property, and they understand that.
Right.
That was, one of the detailed conversations we had with them is, while they've been using the county's parking lot, they have no formal permission in writing, and they really need to obtain that.
But I guess my question is, like, for what their square footage is, how many spaces would they actually need, do you think? Is it even possible? Because I don't think we wanna put this in if it's not possible for them to comply.
So if you look at the caretaker's residence, that would be 2 off-street spaces. If you look at the apartment, that would be 2 off-street spaces. If you look at, the wedding, I have no idea what the square footage of that barn is. I'm just doing a rough guesstimate from being inside of it. Probably somewhere between 30 to,
2,000 square feet?
It's not that much, I don't think.
no, so that would be 8 parking spaces. Plus, the other 4 would be 12.
That's all?
Wow.
If it's really only 2,000 square feet,
Even if it's 4,000 and it's 16, you
I
can
think
get,
it's 2,400 square feet, I walked it off when we were there.
okay, so now you're looking at 4, possibly 10.
you could have a wedding that they could have 50 people, that brings 30 cars, and they only require 12 spaces.
And argue they're doing that now without any parking.
So do you need
But yeah, the ordinance said you-
Yes,
Do you need an agreement with the county to park there? Why do you need an agreement with the county?
if they're using county property for their private off-street parking requirements, yes, because it's not their property, they technically have no right to it, the county can come in
Right,
and shut it down
it
tomorrow.
may be generally available because it's unregulated by the county, but because it's private county property, they can shut it down at any time, and then it's not available. So I think the agreement serves the purpose of ensuring that it is always available whenever they want to use it for a Stolzfus event.
And, Keith, to be clear, that lot could probably easily hold 25 to 30 cars.
Yeah, like you said, I guess they'd have to
Does,
have the.
does the county
agreement.
chain that lot?
I've never seen it change.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
And I've driven back there on random
Right.
Tuesday afternoons at 1 o'clock and it's
A
open.
fisherman occasionally.
Or I've caught some people on their lunch break doing
Yeah.
things in their vehicles they should not be.
The road goes into a dead end.
Yeah.
There's-
Well, you know, the agreement would ensure that the county doesn't block it or the county doesn't complain about it being used. And if we legitimize what's happening at Stolzfus, they may have more events than they do at the present time, in which case there's more likely to be some kind of complaint from the county. So I think it's a good idea to require them to secure some kind of agreement with the county.
Or with Country Meadows.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's what they're working on, right?
Yeah, they said they were gonna try to acquire some additional property.
Is anybody willing to make a motion?
Well, the one thing I just want to point out, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, now seeing it in writing. My only concern is that this is not geographically specific, and it talks about county and borough parks. So there are a couple of properties along the Wyomissing Creek from High Road up to the end that technically could get involved in something like this.
That were built before 1799.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got, I don't mean to suggest that anybody would specifically do anything, but
The Hewitt house
Highland
is
owns a
ours.
property that.
Yeah, we own the Hewitt house.
Well, we own that one, but the Highlands owns the one further out. Sue Lorenzo's property's got a big barn on it and stuff. I mean, there are places that somebody conceivably, as unlikely as it may be today, but it's just the
Well,
rules of unintended consequences that we need to be mindful of.
my intention in drafting it was to make it possible for the borough to, you know, facilitate something like that happening along or within the borough park. But if the committee doesn't want to open that door, I agree with Fred that we could easily narrow it to, you know, have the practical effect of limiting it to the Stolzfus property. I mean, if that's really what the immediate concern is, and if you are uncomfortable with the potential unintended consequences, you know, we can certainly.
I don't think current ownership would do anything like that, but who knows? I mean, it's in the future, so.
All you'd really have to do is change number 2 to the property must be adjacent to an existing Berks County park, period.
I feel better about
I
it.
don't think there would be any other candidate down along the county board. Can't think of anything.
This doesn't take it off the tax rolls, correct?
I don't know what their status is now. Are they taxable or exempt right now?
No idea, I'd have to
But
look.
the answer to your question is, it doesn't. You know, they can always apply for an exemption if they think they have qualification for tax exemption. What this does is legitimize their zoning status.
So then when they would have events there, would they pay a business privilege tax or something on the revenue they get?
Again, goes back to what they're formed, I recall, as a 501c3, so no, they're exempt from having to get a license.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
So what do you want to do here? Would it send this to all council?
Well, do you wanna make a change that Fred is
Yeah, I
proposing?
Yeah.
It's all good idea, Fred. Well, then, I agree that we just need to tweak 503E2 to take out the Wyomissing Borough Public Park. So with that change, then if you wanted to move it ahead, you could.
Okay.
Well, who's it gotta go to? Planning
Council for advertisement.
commission. Doesn't.
Well, it has to go to, should
Oh,
go
planning
to,
commission.
should go to both, borough and county
Planning
planning
commission.
before council considers, enacting.
I'll make a motion to move forward to the next step.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then if the borough planning commission recommends it, they can recommend to council that it be advertised.
All right, moving on. Thanks for your work on that. I think it's, you know, as Fred mentioned earlier, you know, this property predates the Toons and Janssens by well over 100 years. important to the German Lutherans who turned into Amish people that 25% of them are Stoltzfuses in the United States. So, anyway, moving on. Rec and economic development.
So I met on Tuesday with Eric Shippers from Penn National, Steve Parsh from Teleflex, Pete Rowley from Tompkins Vist, who also owns the train building, Chris Haig from the I Mabel Foundation, and Jacob Stein from Boss Cubs. That meeting was coming out of, I believe, the February or March Economic Development Committee meeting, where Jacob came and talked to the committee about, the importance of economic development and recreation. We started the conversation talking about the things we can do collectively for employee attraction, which it sounds like employee attraction is more important than retention. I think once they're here, they get it, it's getting them here. So it was about an hour and a half meeting. One of the biggest eye openers for me coming out of that, and I've talked to John about this, I've talked to Steve about this, I'm gonna bring it up at finance. We need to have policies and procedures in place for corporate sponsorships or corporate donations, because it's very clear we have businesses in our communities that want to work with the borough to sponsor programs, events, facilities, based off, I don't think, Jody, you weren't at rec board last week, were you? So there was an interesting discussion at the rec board as to what donations are made, what type of marketing the rec board is comfortable with, which I understand. But some of the things we talked about at this meeting on Tuesday would be things I would want the rec board to weigh in on, and because of the amount of money that we're talking about potentially being donated, it's a no-brainer to think the person behind that check is going to want some type of recognition, marketing, a small sign, something. So, key point number one is we need to talk about policies and procedures for any type of donation. We talked about the educational component of the bike route, the sharrows, the signs. Eric Shippers told me he has gotten a lot of the same comments that I've gotten, and it's really just having a conversation with someone and explaining, if you think back to when you took your driving test, nobody says anything to you about a bicycle is the same as a vehicle and has all the inherent rights that a motorist does. So we're looking at doing a inaugural bike route ride on July 31st, which is a Saturday. Start at the Teleflex site, ride the whole route, end at Slide Box for a post-ride gathering, get Bamba involved. Those 5 individuals would get everyone and anyone they know, get the community involved, do post on our Parks and Rec Facebook page, website, do an email blast, with the hope of having a 10-minute conversation at the beginning of the ride as to this is what a sharrow is, this is what a sign is, ride the route, and then hopefully get the community engaged in better understanding why it was done and what the point of it is.
This is a big thing, and have we attempted to approach the Reading paper? Granted, we're not Exeter. If we were Exeter, they'd be all over this, or Muhlenberg, or the city.
I put a plug in 4 times, yes. So the different articles John and I have done over the past 2 years on
Why the hell can't we get any representation out of the paper for something? This is a good story. This is one that should be in the Pennsylvania Boroughs magazine also.
So Melissa and I are also going to start working on some information we can put on the website. My thought is, once that's written, I'll just feed it to my contacts at the Reading Eagle. Like, here you go, your story's written for you.
What you mentioned about corporate contributions, I would say the majority of people sitting at this table, we know most of the people in that have corporate offices or residents here to help.
Well, some of the big picture things, Bill, some things I never even heard about till last night when Michelle sent me a link. But anyway, on Pump Park. But we're talking big money that they want to donate, like $150,000 here, $50,000 there. We're not talking nickels and dimes.
No.
So So
Yeah,
that's
and
why
we're
we
s-
need a policy.
We're sitting on a reserve of roughly $60,000 from the fundraising I did for the bike route. You know, and that was just a concept of me going to Teleflex or Slide Fox or Customers Bank and saying, hey, we're doing this project. You know, at the time, that was supposed to be part of our match funds towards the PennDOT grant we ended up not needing. Now it's sitting in a long-term reserve for maintenance of the bike route, potentially paying for the bike share stations longer than the 2 years that PennDOT. Again, there's a ton of potential here for ways we could work with our corporate community if we're willing to do so. I'm trying to say this as tactfully as possible as someone that attends Park and Shade, the rec board, and all the other committee meetings. The mindsets of those two committees does not always match up to council. And what I said to the group of 5 on Tuesday is if you feel these are things the community as a whole, residential and commercial, truly want, you're gonna need to come to those meetings because they need to hear your vocal support that you as a resident, you as a business owner, both want this, or it's not gonna happen. So, you know, my hope is there's more attendance on that public side moving forward too, when things like this are talked about, but that's the Cliff Notes high level version of Tuesday's meeting, which I thought was very productive. We're gonna continue meeting, I'd like to get the school districts involved at Town and Gown next week, I'm gonna mention it, so stay tuned.
What you're saying is pretty much same as, you know, what, Phil Wolf said to me. He said, we gotta get this community encouraged. There's a lot of money in this community that the borough can tap. And, so that's why I said, you know, when the new cameras come in, you know, we're gonna do a photo op, have a write-up. We'll see if the paper can come out and do it. And, you know, and have people think, well, gee, look at all that this guy's done for the police department and for the, you know, municipality as a whole. Gee, maybe I should start thinking about getting involved in some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of what it comes down to, like, you don't know until you ask, but sometimes you just have to ask.
That's true.
And not necessarily going in with a specific, this is what I want, would you please fund it, but, you know, I started that conversation with, what can we do for you? You need help attracting employees, what does that look like from the borough's end? Like, you're aware of our existing rec facilities, what can we do better? Because if you as a 30-something are, you know, being headhunted to move here to work for one of these companies, you're not just concerned about rec, school district, what's the community like, what is around there that I can do for entertainment in my free time, you know, what's quality of life, what other avenues or opportunities are available. It is the bigger picture, but from what they're telling me, rec is a pretty important component of that for an individual, but also for a family and the smaller kids.
Did
So,
Jacob happen to say when he's tearing down the mobile station?
he did not.
You know,
He's not tearing
it's
it
starting to look blighted now.
I think it looked blighted 15
Well,
years
you
ago,
know,
but
that's an eyesore, it should be torn down and torn down now.
Does Boscov's control that?
no,
No,
Namdar does.
So,
well, but he's the main tenant.
Oh, well, Bill.
And as far as publicity is
Hey, you know my
concerned,
thoughts on,
as far as publicity is concerned, we just have to deal with it and go on our own. And we can enhance our website significantly, I think. But as far as the Reading Eagles concerned, it's popular. Its circulation has dwindled. And it's the big thing is staff. One time they had up to like 50 stringers that went out and covered school board meetings and municipal meetings. Now they have 0 stringers. They have probably at least twice, if not 3 times as many staff reporters than they do now. So,
what is the borough, about 4 newsletters a year?
So,
2 newsletters?
well, and I think, to be honest with you, social media is the way of the future. I mean, Phyllis and I were talking about budgeting numbers yesterday in the newsletter specifically. She made a suggestion, she lives in Spring Township, their rec guide, it's very tastefully done, it has ads in it that pay for the newsletter itself. we have always been opposed to doing that. And I'm not saying that's the right or wrong decision, but that's a conversation that I think needs to be revisited. And, you know, all of these things looked at moving forward. We have plenty of businesses that would love to advertise in our publications.
I think we do need to do something publicly about the bike route. That seems to be a real lot for everybody that knows anybody talking. How long are those gonna be there? Why are they there? What's the purpose? Why did they do it?
Why'd you graffiti my street?
Will they be going away soon?
So that's the funny thing that Jacob said that actually made me feel better was, he's like, where I come from in St. Pete's, he's like, they did the same thing in 2005. They actually did it on a much bigger scale, and he goes, people hated it. For 5 to 10 years, people hated it. And he's like, I was just down there last week, and he's like, I let my 4-year-old ride their bike in the street because it finally, like, people now embrace it. People now understand the purpose behind it, that, you know, the whole community can use it. It's an alternative means of transportation that cuts down on traffic.
That's why we better make it public, because people don't understand it.
Yes.
Because they absolutely, and you're never gonna convince, there's a huge group in Wyomissing, you're never gonna convince that that's a good idea.
But they, you know, the other week, Exeter had, you know, Channel 69 did a nice thing on Exeter's new AF bike trail and so forth. You know, but I understand that there's a relationship there, brother and sister or something
But
between
like Chris said,
Exeter.
we gotta do it ourselves.
But yeah, I mean,
Either
we
through
can't
social
count on the
media or
paper.
more publications.
You know, people accuse us of not being transparent. Well, you know, we are, but if people aren't gonna come, you know, promote what we say, then not a hell of a lot we can do.
That's all.
Okay, so then, who's gonna conjure up a policy about advertising?
My comment to Steve was, let's start the conversation at finance. At least get some general guidance.
We'll meet next week.
What
Yeah.
kind of advertising are you talking about?
I mean, perfect example, landscaping companies that fight to get clients in Wyomissing. Would you like to set up a tasteful landscaped sitting or garden area in our parkland? You get a little 1 foot by 2 foot plaque that says donated by, we're done. Like, I'm not, but I mean, even at rec board last week, I was talking about hanging up a banner for 2 hours during a playground event. And I was getting, I don't wanna say kickback, but, you know, we don't wanna market to the kids, and they're already bombarded with advertisement, which I understand, but marketing's not directed towards kids, it's directed towards their parents.
You know, there has to be something in return for these, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and there's certainly no reason we can't put up, you know, temporary, you know,
Banner
banner or
sign,
something like
like no
that.
different than what we do for the Stone House, which has, you know, the next one, the Reading Orchestra Pops
Hey,
concert,
look how
sponsored
much-
by Runner's Fresh Market.
Look how much kickback Dan and myself have been getting on, you know, if somebody wants to donate a bench,
I know.
you know, which is, I'm surprised, I'm shocked.
Are we in any potential conflict with the deed restrictions on parkland?
I've looked at that and I don't see any issue.
That's one of my first questions, was I asked him to research that.
Because, you know, so long as we are, you know, funds are being used to promote the recreational use of the property, you know. So I don't see that as, you know, if we're drawing money in to support the recreational use of the property, I don't see an issue.
And there aren't many dinosaurs around like me anymore, but, I mean, I remember the days when, on a fire company softball team, we were not allowed to pass a hat around for spectators at Happy Hollow when we played other fire companies, which was standard procedure for everybody else, but not Wyomissing, we were not allowed to pass a hat. That was against the recreation rules and policy to collect money. The fire company paid for the umpires themselves. But this is a slight change in that tradition, if you will. So you've got a lot of, not a lot of resistance because there aren't many people like me around anymore.
It's part of the reason why.
How you feeling?
Pretty well, thank you.
Then why did I have to pay you money when we play volleyball?
It's part of the reason why people choose to live here, though. I mean, there are places that move slowly, and then there's Wyomissing. I mean, I remember.
Glacially.
I remember there was a time when the lawn line painter, the guy doing the
Yeah.
lines on the streets, inadvertently ran a yellow line up Old Mill Road through Burton. Well, you would have thought the earth was gonna stop
Yeah.
spinning. I mean, that people thought we were turning their street into a highway or something like that, because there was a double yellow line down the road. The line painter had to go back and repaint it black.
Well, there's a lot of things, and I think I'm a dinosaur right behind you, Dave, that things didn't happen when we were growing up. It's 2021, and whether you like it or not, when you get on the internet, they bombard you, they know what you were searching on the internet, you know, ads, they know everything. So, is there another municipality that has a policy that we could borrow?
This conversation literally just started on Tuesday, and I've been running like a chicken with my head cut off from meeting to meeting since then, so I've not had a chance to look, but that was my first thought. Why reinvent the wheel? Somebody else had to have done this. There's gotta be something out
one
there. Yeah.
We'll start in the Spring Township, they got a nice one.
We did something some years ago with the Berkshire Heights Playground and the baseball outfit there.
That-
And we went through a big hullabaloo about putting advertising on the field.
There's an actual, I've read that agreement, there's a very specific agreement that was drafted to allow that
With-
to happen.
Between the borough and the bowl.
Yes, yes.
Is it still in existence as they were?
It's an agreement that is within our vault / filing system, like we've categorized and
Yeah.
cataloged all of ours.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, it's still in effect.
Okay.
And that's a perfect example, there's a way you can do it tastefully. I'm not saying walking through the parkland system should be a flashing billboard ad. I'm a nature lover, that's why I go into nature, is to get away from it. But if we can recognize tastefully and tactfully somebody that wants to do something, I think we should consider it.
Well, I'm not against the concept. Times change and people's attitudes change. I understand that also. But this community for such a long time is based on an awful lot of tradition, but was not formalized by rules and regulations. It was understood. So you find a little bit of a battle overcoming some of the stigma involved in it. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right, except for the fact that, you know, if we're talking large sums of money, you'll save the taxpayers money.
I understand that too. There's benefits to it all. I mean,
Yeah.
having somebody sponsor a band concert would have been unheard of 25, 30 years ago. You just didn't do stuff like that. Now the benefit is people enjoy the heck out of it, without a question. So, times change. That's,
Okay,
people like to
On,
have
on
their-
a simplified, very simplified, because I know what we're talking dollars here, but just an update, and I hate to steal your library from you. But, you know, Joe Jurgowitz is going to sponsor the duck race. And he's giving,
Makes sense.
yeah. And
He's got that big
Vic-
duck farm over there,
Yeah,
Charles Gulf's around
Yeah,
town.
the largest duck purveyor in the world.
Yeah.
He sends, ships ducks all
For what
Or-
purpose?
over, cooking.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even know
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Huge
it's
duck.
incredible, the operation they have up in Shoemakersville.
Does
But-
he live
Yeah,
He was to sponsor the duck thing.
yes, he's,
Rubber ducky.
actually, I think Vicky's going today to pick up a check, and along with a banner that they're gonna put at the library, you know, thing, you know, Jurgowitz Duck, and, they're gonna sponsor the duck race and get a check for $1,000.
there?
Remember the
Take your word on
Christmas
it.
dinner scene in Christmas Story?
okay, let's move on to miscellaneous, and here's something that really bugs me. This event at the Reading Hospital, aka Tower Health, is gonna happen on the 27th of July, like a ribbon cutting. And, you know, the borough's been kept out of the loop, they won't tell us anything. It's just, you know, what did they do? You know, I just, for me, I don't care, I don't need any credit, but I don't want to get thrown under the bus either. But I just think we have to ensure that George Haynes and Mark Gillen and Judy Schwank get recognized somehow, and we don't even know if they're invited.
Well, I know, so I've talked to individuals from Tower, I've obviously talked to George. The response I got from Tower is that when I asked about doing a joint ribbon cutting ceremony was, our agenda is planned down to the very minute and we're sorry we don't have time for you, but don't worry, we'll mention the Borough of Wyomissing and the support and appreciation we have for that support multiple times throughout the day. Thanks, okay? So then when I made the comment about it would be nice if at least someone from council was invited to this event. Oh, we kept the guest list super small because originally we were planning during COVID. Let me look into that and see if we can open it up. Well, I had a conversation with George Haynes in the meantime. He's telling me, he's like, I only get a +1. He's like, normally our lender, like half my team, this person, that person, all these. He's like, I don't know why they're being so limited. It's like this super top secret thing. But my takeaway from my most recent conversations is they're not gonna budge. Fine, I said to George, like, I personally am at the point, I don't wanna go. Like, we're obviously not wanted. I don't think from what George was able to find out, Senator Schwank or Representative Gillen were invited. It doesn't sound like the county commissioners were invited. Fred was invited, Jack Gumbach was invited. It's just odd.
So the president of West Drainage Council is invited, and not the president of Wyomissing's council.
Yep.
But you were,
But they wanted us to jump through hoops and have special meetings to push this project through.
Which is why George personally was upset as well.
Are they trying to avoid the appearance of extravagance?
That, or I think they might be worried about getting hit with questions about their financial solvency and what their decision is. Because it's right around the same timing as that announcement is supposed to be made, which I respect, but then just be honest about that.
Well, Michelle and I talked briefly about this, and I don't know, we're gonna find out Monday at infrastructure when 4th Street's gonna be done. With the lights completely done.
Yeah, there's a
Sign-
few like punch list items,
Yeah,
light standards
some
need to
things
go in
aren't
signs.
available yet, but, I'm thinking if 4th Street can get it done before the 27th, we have our own event before theirs. And I don't know if that's a
who's
good
gonna
idea.
cover it, ready you?
I don't give a shit.
You can invite Channel 69
We'll
News.
invite the right people though, you know, and everybody, you know, all the council is behind this.
And
And
Do you have a problem, because I have to call Sue Parati about another issue. Mind if I say something to her?
not at all. I mean, I started a rough guest list and I'm guessing
Yeah, we just,
it'd be up
we're
to
renting
50
her
to
house for a
75
week
people.
down the Outer Banks.
yeah, I mean, it's just,
You know, even people like Kathy Bruder, Jenny Granger, you know, people that were integral to us getting the money to do 4th Street should be there, should be a part of that. And what I said to George is, you can't look at them as two separate projects. One would not have happened without the other.
Right.
And he understands that. I think Schwank and Gillen understand that. Everybody else understands that, besides Tower.
Maybe I'll call my lawyer, see Tom work. I'll call Tom and.
She's still part of the board?
Yeah.
well, I don't know.
It is, it's a slight, definitely.
We can talk about it at council, but, once we find out
We'll find
how
that
far,
out.
how far along 4th Street is in infrastructure on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, what I said to John is my guess is it's gonna be done somewhere around July 9th to the 16th, which would give us an 11-day window to do something between there and the 27th.
Well, you'd think that a lot of people that you have, or most of the people on your list would wanna come.
Yeah,
You know, if they got 10 days lead time, that'd be plenty.
and not if their calendar looks like mine, but possibly. And I mean, that's one of those things, sometimes people are willing to shift things to make time for something else.
Yeah. Just a thought, we can talk about it in council, but it really perturbs me the way this is being handled by Tower Health.
Just another example.
Yeah. And I think we've bent over backwards to accomplish a lot of things we accomplished, and maybe Tower Health doesn't, you know, we've done a lot of good things, and Tower Health's in charge of a sinking ship, and, you know, I don't care about what happens to them. I do care about what happens to the medical school. I care, you know, with Reading Hospital affects everybody in Berks County, but, you know, they made their bed, and they gotta figure it out. It's not for us to figure
Just
it out.
always remember that it's building is still owned by us.
Yes, thank God. And the lease was signed by Reading Hospital, not Tower Health. So short of Reading Hospital independently declaring bankruptcy, they're in good shape.
No, we'll have to see. It's just food for thought. Anyway, does anybody, you know, back to the West Reading discussion and, Main Street. When I found an old email when I was going through my stuff with the sale of the spruce, an email I sent to Kevin Barnhart when he was the mayor of West Reading in 1999. He said, hey, you know, why are you worrying about Main Street here when the neighborhoods need help? Well, you can't have an Elm Street unless you have a Main Street, right? So that was the answer. So I'm just thinking, that's another part of the equation, that we could do something with Elm Street if we get a Main Street, or some involvement. It's gonna be complicated, there's no doubt about it. But, you know, when I worked with Dean Rohrbach, who's departed, he did some great things, but it takes somebody with a vision and
Passion,
a
dedication.
passion, dedication, grant writing ability. I don't know, I just think that's another plus for the whole Main Street project. Anyway, that's all I have. Anybody have anything else? Well, thank you one and all, and we got off easy, but Phil Wirt is a true friend of mine. That boy can yak. Anyway, if there's nothing else, the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, look at how it's going.
Oh, my God.
Peace.
Well,
Just in time.